All right, let's read another edition of The Rambler by Dr. Samuel Johnson from this 200-year-old volume. Here we go. This is Rambler number 44 for Saturday, August 18th, 1750, the title of which is Religion and Superstition, a Vision. And there's a bit of Greek here, which is Greek to me, by Homer, which I can't even attempt to read. And then a quote, "Dreams descend from Jove." That's from Alexander Pope. Here we go, to the Rambler. Looks like this one's another epistle, another letter to the good doctor. Or written as such, right? So this is Dr. Johnson writing a letter as if it's to himself by an interested party. Sir, I had lately a very remarkable dream, which made so strong an impression on me that I remember it every word. And if you are not better employed, you may read the relation of it as follows. Methought I was in the midst of a very entertaining set of company, and extremely delighted in attending to a lively conversation, when on a sudden I perceived one of the most shocking figures imagination can frame, advancing towards me. She was dressed in black. Her skin was contracted into 1,000 wrinkles, her eyes deep sunk in her head, and her complexion pale and livid as the countenance of death. Her looks were filled with terror and unrelenting severity, and her hands armed with whips and scorpions. As soon as she came near, with a horrid frown and a voice that chilled my very blood, she bid me follow her. I obeyed, and she led me through rugged paths, beset with briars and thorns, into a deep solitary valley. Wherever she passed, the fading verdure withered beneath her steps. Her pestilential breath infected the air with malignant vapors, obscured the luster of the sun, and involved the fair face of heaven in universal gloom. Dismal howlings resounded through the forest. From every baleful tree the night raven uttered his dreadful note, and the prospect was filled with desolation and horror. In the midst of this tremendous scene, my extricable guide, addressed me in the following manner. Retire with me, O rash, unthinking mortal, from the vain allurements of a deceitful world, and learn that pleasure was not designed the portion of human life. Man was born to mourn and to be wretched. This is the condition of all below the stars, and whoever endeavors to oppose it acts in contradiction to the will of heaven. Fly, then, from the fatal enchantments of youth and social delight, and here consecrate the solitary hours to lamentation and woe. Misery is the duty of all sublunary beings, and every enjoyment is an offense to the deity, who is but worshipped only by the mortification of every sense of pleasure and everlasting exercise of sighs and tears. This melancholy picture of life quite sunk my spirits and seemed to annihilate every principle of joy within me. I threw myself beneath a blasted yew where the winds blew cold and dismal round my head, and dreadful apprehensions chilled my heart. Here I resolved to lie till the hand of death, which I impatiently invoked, should put an end to the miseries of a life so deplorably wretched. In this sad situation I espied on one hand of me a very muddy river, whose heavy waves rolled on in slow, sullen murmurs. Here I determined to plunge, and was just upon the brink, when I found myself suddenly drawn back. I turned about and was surprised by the sight of the loveliest object I have ever beheld. The most engaging charms of youth and beauty appeared in all her form. Effulgent glories sparkled in her eyes, and their awful splendors were softened by the gentlest looks of compassion and peace. At her approach, the frightful spectre who had before tormented me vanished away, and with her all the horrors she had caused. The gloomy clouds brightened into cheerful sunshine, the groves recovered their verdure, and the whole region looked gay and blooming as the Garden of Eden. I was quite transported at this unexpected change, and reveling pleasure began to glad my thoughts when, with a look of inexplicable sweetness, my beauteous deliverer thus uttered her divine instructions. My name is Religion. I am the offspring of truth and love, and the parent of benevolence, hope, and joy. That monster from whose power I have freed you is called Superstition. She is the child of discontent, and her followers are fear and sorrow. Thus different are we. She has often the insolence to assume my name and character, and seduces unhappy mortals to think us the same, till she at length drives them to the borders of despair, that dreadful abyss into which you were just going to sink. Look round and survey the various beauties of the globe, which heaven has destined for the seat of the human race, and consider whether a world thus exquisitely framed could be meant for the abode of misery and pain. For what end has the lavish hand of Providence diffused such innumerable objects of delight, but that all might rejoice in the privilege of existence, and be filled with gratitude to the beneficent author of it? Thus to enjoy the blessings he has sent is virtue and obedience, and to reject them merely as means of pleasure is pitiable ignorance or absurd perverseness. Infinite goodness is the source of created existence. The proper tendency of every rational being, from the highest order of raptured seraphs to the meanest rank of men, is to rise incessantly from lower degrees of happiness to higher. They have each faculties assigned for them for various orders of delights. What, cried I, is this the language of religion? Does she lead her votaries through flowery paths and bid them pass an unlaborious life? Where are the painful toils of virtue, the mortifications of penitence, the self-denying exercises of saints and heroes? The true sentiments of a reasonable being, answered she mildly, do not consist in unbounded indulgence or luxurious ease, in the tumult of passions, the languor of indolence, or the flutter of light amusements. Yielding to immoral pleasure corrupts the mind. Living to animal and trifling ones debases it. Both in their degree disqualify it for its genuine good, and consign it over to wretchedness. Whoever would be really happy, must make the diligent and regular exercise of his superior powers his chief attention. Adoring the perfections of the Maker, expressing goodwill to his fellow creatures, cultivating inward rectitude, to his lower faculties he must allow such gratifications as will, by refreshing him, invigorate his nobler pursuits. In the regions inhabited by angelic natures, unmingled felicity forever blooms. Joy flows there with a perpetual and abundant stream. Nor needs there any mountain to check its course. Being conscious of a frame of mind originally diseased, as all the human race has cause to be, must use the regimen of a stricter self-government. Whoever has been guilty of voluntary excesses must patiently submit both to the painful workings of nature and needful severities of medicine in order to his cure. Still, he is entitled to a moderate share of whatever alleviating accommodations this fair mansion of his merciful parent of hordes, consistent with his recovery, and in proportion to his recovery advances. The liveliest joy will spring from his secret sense of an amended and improved heart, so far from the horrors of despair in the condition even of the guilty. Shudder, poor mortal, at the thought of the gulf into which thou wast but now going to plunge. While the most faulty have ever encouragement to amend, the more innocent soul will be supported with still sweeter consolations under all its experience of human infirmities, supported by the gladdening assurances that every sincere endeavor to outgrow them shall be assisted, accepted, and rewarded. To such a one, the lowest self-abasement is but a deep-laid foundation for the most elevated hope, since they who faithfully examine and acknowledge what they are shall be enabled under my conduct to become what they desire. The Christian and the hero are inseparable, and to aspirings of unassuming trust and filial confidence are set no bounds. To him who is animated with a view of obtaining approbation from the sovereign of the universe, no difficulty is insurmountable. Secure in this pursuit of every needful act, his conflict with the severest pains and trials is little more than the vigorous exercise of a mind in health. His patient dependence on that providence which looks through all eternity, his silent resignation, his ready accommodation of his thoughts and behavior to its inscrutable ways, is once the most excellent source of self-denial and a source of the most exalted transports. Society is the true sphere of human virtue. In social active life, difficulties will perpetually be met with restraints of many kinds. Restraints of many kinds will be necessary, and studying to behavior right in respect of these is a discipline of the human heart, useful to others and improving to itself. Suffering is no duty, but where it is necessary to avoid guilt or to do good, nor pleasure, a crime, but where it strengthens the influence of bad inclinations or lessens the generous activity of virtue. The happiness allotted to man in his present state is indeed faint and low, compared with his immoral prospects and noble capricities, but yet whatever portion of it the distributing hand of heavens offers to each individual is a needful support and refreshment for the present moment, so far as it may not hinder the attaining of his final destination. Return them with me from continual misery to moderate enjoyment and grateful alacrity. Return from the contracted views of solitude to the proper duties of a relative and dependent being. Religion is not confined to cells and closets, nor restrained to sullen retirement. These are the gloomy doctrines of superstition by which she endeavors to break those chains of benevolence and social affliction that link the wearer of that's of ones that are sent out now, right? Well, hold on. Try it again. These are the gloomy doctrines of superstition by which she endeavors to break those chains of benevolence and social affliction that link the welfare with every particular with that of the whole. Remember that the greatest honor you can pay to the author of your being is by such a cheerful behavior as discovers a mind satisfied with his dispensations. Here, my preceptress paused, and I was going to express my acknowledgment for her discourse, when a ring of bells from the neighboring village, and a new risen sun darting his beams through my window, awakened me. I am yours, etc. And there's a footnote here that says this paper and number 100 were written in the late Miss Elizabeth Carter written by the late Miss Elizabeth Carter of Deal in Kent, who died February 19th, 1806. All right. Thanks for joining me.